I think it's time for us to call this meeting to order. Let's go around and identify ourselves for the record. Pete, we'll start with you.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Paul Holman, Assembly.
Bill Evans.
Tim Steele, Assembly.
Jennifer Johnston.
Elvie Gray Jackson.
Dick Traney.
Dan Moore.
Dan Reed.
Glenda Gibson, Functional Steering Committee Chair.
Greg Campbell, Synergy Project.
Bethel Signs, Synergy Project.
Kate Guyard, CFO.
Tom Dale, Synergy Program Manager. Tim Bernhardt, Synergy Project.
Bull Cullen, Synergy Program.
Zach Parsons, Observer.
All right, Dick.
Julie Collins, Trade Consolidation.
Well, Kate, we're going to turn the time over to you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. What our goal is today is to familiarize you with the project rebuild that we've been involved in from about December of last year. We went through the QA process in January. We responded and reviewed that QA with you. Zig gave us some very strong recommendations on program management. And we have spent our time in the month of March and April revitalizing our program management and the way that this project will be run on a going forward basis. So we want to introduce you to the changes that have been made that we think will stabilize and allow you to have a very productive and effective remaining implementation period. So my purpose is to really be what I would consider the beginning process of me stepping back from being the person who talks to you a lot about this program to step back and to allow people who are likely to continue through the transition to let you know that we have set this up to go beyond transition into stability with a management team who are already municipal employees that are now well configured to move this project forward for you, and also the what we call program management, which is also now configured to give you the best technical advice, management experience in SAP implementation. So we have hoped to provide you with a stable, reliable, and dependable workforce to put you over the top and to get the system into implementation. So what I want to talk to you about, if you can change the slide. He's good at a lot of things, but we're not going to hold him accountable for inability to change the slide.
Kate, do you want us to hold questions till you've got a break, or do you want us to ask questions during the presentation? What's your choice?
Mr. Chairman, it would be best for me if you questioned as we go through.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
So I don't have a lavalier mic, and I'm not used to sitting and talking so well, but what we told you we were going to do, or what I guess my personal vision was, is to put together a series of committees that have specific duties, and those duties are, and we name them, the Executive Steering Committee, and the duties that would be associated with that. So in our ranks, we have executives, and then we have director-level folks. Director-level folks have a tendency to stay on in any kind of transition. They also are the owners of the modules. And one of the first things I observed when I came here is that the owners of the modules didn't have a role, a direct chartered role. I think they were all consulted, but they didn't have a chartered role on the engagement. So we created what we called the Functional Steering Committee. We gave birth to them in November. I can tell you that I just went through the diapering stage for a while, but they have gotten out of the toddler phase and they are walking. This is a group of your directors that you know, that you've seen in a lot of different phases of the management of MOA. These people you can rely on to make the budget decisions, to make the scoping decisions, and they have an actual total vested interest in the success of this project. So this is the group group that's going to move you forward through this transition that's upcoming, and they will stay with the SAP project all the way through stabilization. And this is called the Functional Steering Committee. Glenda Gibson from AWWU is the chair. The reason we have AWWU as a chair is because Ms. Gibson has been on the project for 3 years. So she had tremendous historical knowledge, and that is why we appointed her as the chair. Normally, we had the same vested time in a controller of MIOA, we would have appointed our controller. So Karen Northworthy is from ER. She is in the audience. I know you're all familiar with her. She's standing up. Marilyn Manzoff from OMB. Lance Ahern, our CIO. Tom Fink, our controller. Rick Miller from MLMP. Ron Haddon, our purchasing director. Dan Moore, our treasurer. Jacqueline Hofflich, our benefits director. And myself are the program sponsor. So we sit on the functional steering committee. I also, based on SIG's recommendations, sit on the Synergy Executive Committee. Because of the transition, we didn't put the names out, but those were the people we would expect that a new incoming mayor would appoint to the steering committee. The steering committee takes the direction from the mayor and it filters that direction down to the functional steering committee. Its overall responsibility is to present you with a budget and to guide the policies and the procedures and the overall delivery plan that's coming out of the Synergy. We have formed subcommittees for critical areas. You're well aware of the time consolidation issue that was brought to you out of the SAP QA. We are forming a time consolidation subcommittee. We are forming a change control committee to control scope creep. I, being your largest scope creep concern, am not on that committee. Ron Haddon will chair that committee. As the purchasing director, it's appropriate for him, his background and expertise, to manage change and manage scope. Infrastructure and software subcommittee, you know that you have to do an upgrade. You know that there are infrastructure questions that are facing you. So we have a subcommittee that we've structured for that. Obviously, you're on the schedule, as is SIG, very valuable oversight. And we have our series of outside experts and internal resource advisors that we rely on. So this is Synergy, which is the overall program that we're involved in. And this is the management structure that we put together. There are charters for each one. It's taken about 3 weeks and maybe 12 meetings to go through the functional steering committee's charter. What decisions should they make? What authority do they have? Can the project sponsor overrule the functional steering committee's desire? What if somebody doesn't want to do something and the rest of them do want to do something? Then what? Can you do simple majority rules? Not on Synergy. You cannot. Simple majority will not rule, with the exception of yourselves. You have to have a unanimous decision minus one. So, and one person can appeal the decision up to the executive steering committee. So we have taken a lot of time to put in structure that I think is going to be very helpful to you. Dan Moore and Glenda Gibson, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about that.
Mr. Holman.
I know it's kind of early and I have some questions on functions as we go. I can tell you that for close to next year, there will not be a change on the assembly, but I am a little concerned that literally from the top down to several layers here, there may or may not be changes coming in the next several months. What would that functionally do for the project? Do you see that as being a potential problem? I'm sure there would be. Let's just hypothetically say there's a new mayor. They're going to have to get briefed up on the new program, or the program as it exists and going forward, and then it just continues on down the line. At what point do we leave municipal employee to where we have someone who might be under contract that's going to be continuing, perhaps?
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, the directors that are, with the exception of 1 or 2 of the members of the functional steering committee, these people have long-standing performance at the MOA. So that's the purpose of putting that functional steering committee, because we know the executive director ranks are likely to change. They happen in every administration. So we've been working hard to plan for that, to put in this middle group, and actually the module owners that will be running it to manage the implementation. So that's our answer to that question.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Guyard. As far as the ML&P representative, I think we all know that that person is going to be leaving shortly. So we do we have a replacement in place?
Through the chair, yes, Ms.
Thank
Gray
you.
Jackson, we will bring in the next, the individual's name is Molly, and I believe that is going to be either replacing Rick or serving right under Rick. So we're going to be talking to Mr. Trent about whether he assigns the CFO level, which would be my preference, or whether he assigns the next level down, which is their controller level. Our strategy in functional steering group is that they have to be decision makers who can vote and not take it back to anybody that supervises them.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
Good, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So does this person named Molly, is this somebody that's going to be new to what we're doing here, or somebody who has some familiarity with what's happening?
Through the chair, both Molly and Mark Johnson are relatively new within the last year or so at ML&P. So they have, they have experience within the utility, but they have not been on the SAP engagement in the past. They're recent employees. And this committee was only formed in November, so.
But the project, if I can follow up, sorry, Ms. Garrett, but the project has been going on since 2011. But anyway, thank you, Ms. Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Steele, sir.
What's the time demand for those folks? Are we putting a lot of demand on them? They do have other jobs, so.
Through the chair, Mr. Steele, the time demand recently has been very high. We meet once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, as we're trying to negotiate a very strong charter. And in the future, the time demand will be once a week or 2 hours. Mr. Steele, I don't know when the future is actually going to occur, however.
We've been joined by Mr. Hall. Thank you, sir, for joining us. There are no other questions.
So in addition to putting together a functional steering committee, what I call the stakeholder ownership committee, we have put together program management. And this was an area where we felt we could add significant value if we identified management to be responsible for each of the modules that we have. So we have, in addition to identifying a program manager, we have what I would consider area manager. So where there's areas of risk or areas that would normally be considered like siloed within themselves, we've created a senior project manager position to ensure that all the work within that silo is performed timely, within budget, and with capable, competent people and oversight. So that's why you'll see this, and much of the rest of the program is dedicated to you becoming familiar with these senior project managers in this SAP layout. So Synergy is comprised of SAP and Kronos. So 2 components under the umbrella of Synergy. What you're hearing about right now is the SAP project and governance. I have not dedicated a significant amount of my time to establishing the Kronos component of this, but we know we have a Kronos upgrade that's coming. We know we have to pull all these 5 different systems into one enterprise level system in Kronos, and that project is, I'm working on the budget for it, but I do not have the same kind of governance for you today. My focus has been SAP. So,
Mr. Honeman.
Just briefly, I'm sorry, it's difficult to see Mr. Campbell. I don't have his
The lights need to be dimmed.
summary.
We can.
In fact, I think he's in attendance. I see like 4 different, hard to tell where your expertise was.
oh, it's because it's off the screen. Yes, sir.
It's Paulson
He's
here.
going to have an opportunity to walk you through that himself.
Oh, okay, never mind, I can walk through your.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Go ahead, Kate.
So the next part of it is where I get to stop talking and introduce you to Tom Dale. Oh, never mind. That's because I was going ahead of this. So I do still get to stop talking, but I get to introduce you to the Functional Steering Committee. Linda Gibson, I'm sure you're all familiar with her, is AWWU CFO, and our very own Dan Moore, treasurer, has added a tremendous amount of value because he has a very mature governance background. So he's been really instrumental. So Glenda? Okay. Just to reiterate, these are the members of the Functional Steering Committee. And the way the charter was written is that we've identified within the charter positions that are members of the Functional Steering Committee to make it a long-lived document so that as individuals may come or go, those positions would then hopefully be represented on the steering committee. So Kate did the introductions of all of these individuals. You can go to the next slide, Lindsay. This is just some of the highlights of the Functional Steering Committee and what we're about and why we were formed. We're here to make operating level decisions, and we are intended to be a decision-making body. The members have been selected for focused expertise in the business, and basically we represent the business and we're the ones that are owners of this system once it's live and working. We all have a direct stake in the final outcome of the project. Our purpose is to support the program team and to make sure that we can do everything that we can to make sure the program team has the resources and the help that they need to get this thing done. We're also serve the function of controlling the program scope, making sure that the scope doesn't expand unnecessarily, but also making sure that we get what we need out of the system. And the intent is that the Functional Steering Committee will be active through the SAP system, that it is not just a project committee, but that we will continue to exist and manage this SAP system throughout the life, through future upgrades, through any changes to the system. Yes.
Jennifer, sorry.
So, and you know that we've heard or seen some reports from Ziggy as you've gone maybe from your diapers to your shorts on this. One question I have, and my concern has been from the get-go of this project, and the concern as we've gone through this whole revamping, how will the functional committee look at the budget? Oh, sorry. How will the functional committee look at the budget, and how will the functional committee address business decisions? Because as we know, we can't always have perfect. So do you have you in your scope and in your discussions, have you discussed the governance of the budget and the governance of business decisions?
Yes, we have. We've discussed the fact that we have a budget, we have to live within the budget. This isn't going to be a perfect, everybody gets everything they want system, because there is no such thing.
Right.
Nobody can afford that. But the reason that the committee was formed and the membership of the committee is to represent the variety of interests that will be had in this system. You've got utilities, you've got regulated utilities, you've got finance, you've got HR, you've got payroll. All have a stake in how the system works and how it's going to function. So by having that diverse representation and having the committee as a whole make decisions, and that was part of some of the intense discussion on what is consensus and what is approval of a change, what constitutes approval of a decision. That the committee really needs to come together and all pretty much agree on this is the way we're going, this is how we're going to operate, and this is what we need or this is not what we need. That's why we came to the decision that approval of any decision the committee makes is unanimous -1. You can have one dissenting vote, and anybody who has a dissenting vote has the right to appeal any decision to the Executive Steering Committee.
And your constraint within that is the budget.
Yes. Our constraint is the budget. Any items that actually require additional budget, the Functional Steering Committee will make a recommendation to the Executive Steering Committee. The Executive Steering Committee is the committee that actually has the ultimate say and authority over the budget.
Any other questions from semi-members? Go ahead, Matt.
And the final bullet point is that there's regular communication between the Executive Steering Committee and the Functional Steering Committee. And Dan Moore's going to take it from here.
Okay, thank you. On this slide, this is again related to the Functional Steering Committee. We have certain key functions that we expect to fulfill, and one of them, of course, is to monitor what our goals are for the project and to make sure that things get delivered as promised. The one question that just came from the assembly about the budget, part of it is not just the dollar budget, it was actually the blueprint design. And what's really important is that we lock into that blueprint, and when we look at any change orders or any other modifications, it's all about, is it in accordance with that blueprint that we all agreed on? So that's very important. This project and this committee is designed to keep the momentum of the project going. We don't want to have things stopped for long periods of time because one person or one area is sort of out of sync. So there's a lot of connection between the program manager, which is, I call him sort of the general on the field. He controls all these resources. He will report to us, and we report to the executive steering committee. But we're sort of the middleman in all this. We're a very key group of people. We have a very vested interest in the success of the project. And we do, like Kate said, we do hope to stay around and actually have some continuity to help this project keep going. Just a couple other points I have. This is a really key point. When it says the second to last bullet talks about formal acceptance of any project deliverables, we have, and you've seen the chart before where it talks about these gate checks. You do a certain phase, and then there's this little icon that says gate check. We're the group that's going to really, really scrutinize those key moments in time, and we're going to decide on that consensus basis, unanimous -1, whether or not we sign off on that gate check. So we're the users of the system. We help design it. We help monitor it. We're going to live with it, and we're going to make sure that we as a group covering all the major areas say, yes, you have a green light to go to the next phase. And that's a very, very important function of this group. So that if we want to go to the next slide, we can talk about how we're going to measure success. Okay, so and this actually comes direct from our charter. A lot of these slides are direct verbiage from the charter that we have. And so you say, how do we measure success? The success here is, if you can read there, it's being able to validate that the system is working as designed. This is according to blueprint. Okay, so that's very, very important. And you see the second bullet refers to blueprint functionality. The other part, though, is that we want the system to actually meet the needs. So in the charter, we talk about first is functionality, then there's the costs, and their third element, do you recall? I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, we have a structure in terms of how we analyze these situations that come before us. And so we are going to be a disciplined group. We will meet at a minimum on a weekly basis. It's completely open-ended until the project is done, and even then we'll continue to meet. So I think it's a good governance structure. It's one that did not exist before at all. Basically, the city controller was sort of the main point of contact. Now we have a group covering all the major areas that is the kind of sort of the group contact, and it'll be very engaged. So those are my comments.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Yeah, I don't expect a decision on this question today, but at some point in time, we need to know a ballpark. We have funding through September for the contractor, but it would be nice to know at some point what our target expenditure is going to be on this whole project. And,
Sure, we have a slide for that.
okay.
Great.
Good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I want to introduce the group, Tom Dale, and he is going to take the remaining sections. Let's talk about SAP, Synergy SAP. Mr. Dale is going to introduce himself to you and then run through what we call the revitalization activities that are going to be underway. So, Mr. Dale.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending with us today. I wanted to take a few minutes to introduce myself and my background and share a few opening remarks, and then from there I will talk you through the different missions as we've defined them in the program charter for the revitalization phase. So in terms of my background, I've been at this about 25 years. I started my career doing commercial off-the-shelf software packages for financial management. This was before SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and all those folks were in the marketplace. I ended up going to work for one of my customers, which was National Park Service in the Department of the Interior. I spent 12 years with the Park Service, all of that in the financial management organization. I left the Park Service as the finance officer for the totality of the National Park Service, and in that capacity I had we had a national finance center. I had about 135 people. We did everything from running the finance system to paying all the, we did all the payments, employee travel reimbursement, and produced the annual performance and accountability report, financial statements similar to your CAFR. From there, I went back into consulting. I worked for Bearing Point for a number of years, where I started a practice doing compliance with Office of Management Budget Circular 8123, which is financial controls over internal reporting, and supported a number of federal agencies in their efforts to comply with that circular. I worked for Grant Thornton, which is one of the top 5 largest public accounting firms in the world, and in my capacity with Grant Thornton, started myself and 2 other individuals started their state and local government consulting practice. While there, my principal clients were in the state of Texas, the chief technology officer, and in California with the chief audit executive of the California Employees Pension Retirement System, who was doing a massive PeopleSoft implementation at the time. Also did work with the lottery commissions in both Texas and California. I've worked with SAP in different capacities for probably 5 or 6 years over the course of my career. I was an executive vice president for a company in Texas that did SAP work in the utility industry, and I have been with SAP now for the past 2.5 going on 3 years. While at SAP, the customers that I've worked with have ranged from the United Nations up in New York, the Office of the Secretariat. I've worked with the U.S. Postal Service, which has the largest HCM implementation that SAP has in the entire world, and worked extensively with the Department of Agriculture, building a system for them that integrated some of the components that you're doing here at ECC, customer relationship management, CRM, but it also had a twist in integrating geospatial information systems into it, so it was somewhat of a unique position, or unique project rather. My last position at SAP before taking on this role is I was the executive with oversight for all of the project management activities that we had in the federal government space. There's a question.
Mr. Dale, Mr. Gray Jackson has a question, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to wait until you finished, but that's all right.
That's okay.
So how many different organizations were you involved with the implementation of SAP from the beginning to the end?
I have not actually ever been involved with an implementation from the beginning. It has been my lot for opportunity. Typically when I have been brought into projects, it is for project recovery.
Okay, so thank you. Hopefully you can answer my next question. And my next question is, so the SAP project that you have been involved in, can you tell us what the initial cost was going to be, or projected cost, and what the final costs were? And you may not be able to do that right now, but we do have 3 hours, so if you want to give it a try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know that I can share myself customer budgets with you. I can tell you that each project is, and I'm not trying to be evasive about this, but each project is unique in terms of the solution set that is trying to be implemented, the span of control. Like, for example, when you're looking at United Nations, it was a global implementation, so much larger in scale than doing a municipality, and they were doing a lot more modules, a lot more different modules, products of SAP than what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do recognize that each project is unique, but for me, it still makes a difference especially considering our situation, where we started and where we're at now and where we're going to be. It makes a difference to hear about other implementations and other organizations, or what they thought it was going to cost and what it ended up costing. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
Actually, you answered most of my question, but I noticed that your experience has been mainly federal. Have you had any experience with state or local government?
Yes, I have. I've worked both for the state of Texas and in the state of California. In the state of California, that was a PeopleSoft implementation, but it was the second largest IT project being ever undertaken in the state of California. And my team was part of reviewing all of the work being performed by the SI there as they were doing all the different design documents from an auditing and control perspective.
So that one was still in the design phase then, is that correct? I hear you.
It was what in SAP language they were going through blueprinting and interrealization. So
Yeah.
design and build.
Okay. But you have had a lot of experience as far as going into ones that have had changes in their blueprints, or have had organic changes.
I actually can't speak to that. Although it wasn't a state project, I spent over a year with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. When I started with them, they had just gone live on the first release of a system they called Midas. It had been live for about 2.5 months maybe before I got there. It was probably a decision to go live earlier than maybe it should have, and so the system went into production with a lot of different issues. So I was brought in to serve the role of what they called hypercare lead, which is essentially system stabilization, to give you a sense of the complexity or the challenges they were facing. Within a few weeks, they had thousands of trouble tickets related to the system. So part of what my role was to first get the process for triaging those tickets under control so that the development team could focus on the right things to fix the system, and then get the fix, and then managing the development and team and release management process to get that system fixed. And then I was there throughout the entire next phase, which was a build and release 2, which added additional functionality.
So maybe organic isn't the right word.
Perhaps.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, Mr. Dale.
Yes.
Are you now then a municipal employee as a paid employee, or are you under contract?
No, sir. I'm an SAP employee and under contract to the municipality through SAP.
Mr. Hall, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may we have those shades lowered? All I see are silhouettes on that side of the room.
Thank
It
you.
would be a real
Does
benefit.
somebody know if those shades will come down? Please bring them down.
Kind of like the sun.
It looks like there's shades built into them, but I don't know what gets them to come down.
Something wrong with your eyes.
So one last comment that I'd like to share with you, and it's on a personal note, I suppose. As I interviewed for this position, and it was an extensive interview process, I not only interviewed with a panel, which Kate and a number of other people were part of. I spoke with Mayor Sullivan, and I think it probably consisted of about 5 or 6 different phone calls while I was on vacation about a month ago.
Did you say you were a contract or an employee?
Contract.
Well,
That's
you
okay.
were indulging me with the birds in the background, but I was at the time looking to do something different with my career in SAP. I mean, I truly enjoy working for SAP, but you can probably tell by my resume I've done a lot of different things and was ready to do something else. One thing that again that I'd like to share is I want to be here. One thing that
Well, we
I
hope so.
heard not so much that Kate said it, but I think I heard it in her voice, but was that she wanted me to be here. And in consulting, that is an unusual thing. It's nice to be somewhere where people feel like they want you here and you can help. So I'm certainly committed to doing everything that I can. And I can tell you that from an SAP perspective within our organization, this project has the most senior levels of management attention being paid to it. I spend a lot of time, and some others that are in the room here from SAP, we spend quite a bit of time briefing on the progress of where we're at in this program to our senior leadership. So with that, if there are no more questions.
Ernie, looks like it's down. Questions, Ernie? Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson has a comment, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment. I'm really glad that you really want to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can you give me some?
So what I'd like to do now is walk you through what we have organized as the 12 missions. They are in our program charter, and they are the activities that really support this revitalization effort, the things that we're actively
Thank you,
engaged
ma'am.
in to take us through the bulk of the year. The first three of these missions, the first two of these three are actively underway, and when my team of senior project managers have an opportunity to talk through each of their areas, they will be talking to you about progress that is being made, has been made, and continues to be made in these different work streams. But the first mission is the project preparation mission. So this is kind of step number one in the SAP program management implementation methodology. All of what Kate talked about in terms of establishing the appropriate governance structures is part of that and is very important. And we are also preparing a number of different document artifacts. There's probably a list of about 20 of them. Things like scope management plans, a budget management plan, quality management plan. This list is fairly extensive, but all of those documents will guide the program throughout its duration. And I think it's very important that I think it's something that may not have been done originally, but those kinds of things are important to make sure that things get off on the right foot, and secondly, to make sure they stay on track. The second mission is what we call the document inventory mission. This is an outcome or follow-on, I would say, to the quality assurance review that SAP performed. One of the principal findings was that the system, as built, is not thoroughly documented. In some areas, the documentation may be sufficient, but in other areas, it may be lacking or not documented altogether. So we are conducting, and so the QA being the basis of that, we have developed a checklist or master inventory of what we would expect there to be in terms of documentation, and now we need to go through a process of collecting all of those artifacts and then assessing their the sufficiency or whether they're up to the task of appropriately documenting the requirements. And so as we get into Blueprint, that's critically important, because that goes down to, and I think this is an exhibit at the bottom of this slide that you may have seen before as part of the revitalization. But this document inventory flows into what will be the blueprint phase, where we're taking this as-built documentation, the functional and technical specifications, and getting to a to-be blueprint. There'll be a gap analysis, and those are the kinds of, as we go through that process, that's where the change control board and the functional steering committee, those types of governance activities really come into play, because we'll find, I fully expect we'll find things, and we're going to have to bring them forward and say, are these things that we really want to do, or are these things that maybe aren't so important anymore. And we're planning on working through that process. You can see the timeline, and then hopefully in mid to end of September, we will move into the realization phase, which in SAP is basically building the system. Each of the green triangles that you see in that bottom exhibit represent the gate checks that Glenda had referred to earlier. There will be additional quality assurance checks and gates as well, but those are the principal and most significant. Next slide, please. The next three.
Sir, Mr. Honeman has a question for you. Mr. Honeman?
So when you say get realization, you're not saying go live with anything, you're saying that's when you're going to be actually putting together the program that we're going to be working with?
So that's when we're actually constructing or completing the development on the system. So realization does not mean go live. We're not going live in October. That's not what I was intending to say.
Wow.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Honeman, we created two segments of this. First was revitalization, which is where we're kind of getting the project righted. That's revitalization, and all the documents and the planning and the strategy that happens to kind of get the train on the tracks. And then realization is a SAP term, and that's when they're using the blueprint and they're starting to turn the buttons on the system. So they're developing the system. So they're finishing out all that development on Philo that you heard about and working on HCM. That's what they call, SAP calls, and anybody who works on SAP calls that realization. I call it development. They're turning and configuring the system. And then when you get through realization, you're going to go live. So,
Mr. Honeman.
And I might, and I don't want to get too cogged or bogged down. I know we're going to be going forward, and I'll probably get some of these answers. My most basic of questions would be, is there anything in the last 4 years that we can use for the track to start now, other than having to go back and maybe scrap? I mean, I'm hearing what immediately red flag was documents not existing or can't find them or something like that on what we've been doing to date. And I can imagine that would be both frustrating and perhaps not helpful when you're trying to develop for realization. So maybe that's an answer.
through the chair,
Ms. Guide?
Mr. Training, Mr. Honeman, there's a lot of, they constructed the house without the architectural designs being finalized. So we say, SAP QA told us and ZIG told us, get your architectural designs completed. Get them completed out, not start from scratch, but complete those that you have, and that's that inventory. Do we have them? Are they any good? Are they in Outlook? Glenda has 22,000 emails that are SAP decisions. We have to translate that into that finished architecture, and then we build it based on what those plans are.
Jennifer Johnston,
Yeah, I'm
ma'am.
fine, thanks.
What, ma'am?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dale, you mentioned the phrase gap analysis. Is that sort of like finding holes in the system and figuring it out?
Exactly.
Just thought I'd bring that forward. Thanks.
So moving on, the next three missions, there's a change control planning mission. This is really, it's well underway with the approval of the functional steering committee charter and the establishment of the change control subcommittee. We're in the process of developing a charter specific to the CCB, the change control board, and how it will operate. But that mission will ensure, again, that there is continual involvement and oversight from the municipality's perspective on what's going on in the project.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead,
the
ma'am.
Change Control Board will manage your scope. So Ms. Johnson has asked about, and everybody's probably concerned about, are you going to grow it and grow it and grow it so we never get done? What I tried to do in establishing a Change Control Board was put some authority over who says what gets built. I can, with my authority and persuasive personality right now, add a module that hasn't been added before by just saying, we will do this. Now, change control will prevent anyone from doing that. So that's in terms of all the benefit that you have from additional controls in this project, your change control board, supervised by Ron Haddon, is going to be your go-to place to control your scope and your budget. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please continue.
The next two missions are somewhat interrelated because they have a lot of the same players involved. There is a data migration planning mission, and so that is to develop and refine the plan for what data will be migrated out of PeopleSoft, how that data, what the quality of that data is, how we will cleanse data, and that will be overseen again by the functional steering committee when it comes to change control, but there is also an infrastructure subcommittee that's dedicated to working on those kinds of issues as they come up and decisions need to be made. And then lastly on this slide, a data access planning mission, and that gets to for data that is not converted but still needed by the municipality for whether it's reporting or auditing purposes, how will that data be accessed? And there's a lot of different ways to approach that, but we need to work through that.
So, sorry, to that.
Ms. Johnston.
All right, and you'll be looking for other purposes. Sorry. You'll be looking for other things than just keeping the mainframe going, correct? Or you'd be looking cloud or
Correct.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting when I said there's several different ways to approach that. Yes.
And when you're looking at the data migration plan, are you looking at taking time shots for the data, and storing the rest, or am I getting too much into the weeds? And
no, I wouldn't say that's in the weeds. Those kinds of decisions and alternatives are what we need to outline, and then those decisions would be made by the functional steering committee.
Go ahead, ma'am, then Mr. Steele.
Sorry, Mr. Steele. Ms. Johnston, each one of these is ultimately going to end up in one of several documents that would be out and shared. So the decision-making process around how we're going to do data migration will be first in a plan and then documented. So there's going to be, because those are very large issues, are we going to put all the data and where are we going to put the data? And because they're then going to control your cost to a degree. Mm-hmm. These are all going to be documented and submitted to you.
Mr. Steele?
Well, how far back are we going to go? Are we going to have access to history way back? Are we going to set an in type? Or are we going to look at the data to see how important it is? What are we going to do on that?
Through the chair, Mr. Steele, some of the data management is going to be dictated by what the federal requirements are. For example, for someone or state requirements, someone who has PERS Tier 2, you have to keep that data for a very long time. So the answer to your question is, depending on what the data is, in a grant, you have to keep it through the audit period and the project. So all of that has to be identified and then documented.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the hardware replacement, is that going to include desktop replacement for employees also? Thank you, Mr.
Through
Chairman.
the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, the desktop replacement activity is separate from SAP altogether.
Thank you. If I can follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, but are replacements going to be necessary, I guess is the question.
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, IT believes that we should be in the process right now of refreshing our hardware that people use at their stations, and there will be no further additional refreshing after that. So the hardware refresh plan that IT has and will be presenting to you in the next 60 days will address any needs that SAP has.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no other questions right now, sir. Go ahead.
I think, okay, we're on the next slide. Thank you, Lindsay. So the next mission is the hardware infrastructure planning mission. So currently, and to clarify, by hardware, we're talking about the current SAP landscape that's in place. So you have what's called on-premise or locally hosted, and it's a 4-tier environment. So they're all on machines here in the municipality. There are different alternatives for how we can move forward, whether that hardware is sufficient and needs to be upgraded, or whether the municipality would want to consider other alternatives rather than a fully on-premise hosted solution. So there's an option to go to a cloud solution or what we call a hybrid solution, where you may have some environments that are locally hosted and some environments that are cloud hosted. And then as part of that as well is underlying database platform. SAP has a product called HANA that all of our cloud implementations run on. It's a different database architecture. It's in-memory computing. It's extremely fast. And so that's something some of my colleagues from SAP are actually here in town this week, and will be meeting with members of the infrastructure subcommittee to talk through some of those proposals, and ultimately they'll be putting the infrastructure subcommittee will be working through a document to outline all the different alternatives with pros and cons and associated costs.
Mr. Dale, Ms. Gray Jackson has a question. Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Garrett will probably be the person to answer this question. But anyway, you talk about hardware and alternatives in the cloud. So what part of the hardware is on our agenda for next Tuesday? Which I saw something, I didn't see the document, but in our pre-agenda I saw a hardware request on our agenda. I don't think I dreamt it, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, I don't have that recollection right now. It's not hardware that's for this project. I can assure you of that, because I would be up on that one.
I think Lance is the back here.
Mr. Chairman, if I can follow up,
Go ahead, ma'am.
I think Ms. Garrett is going to follow up. I didn't think I dreamt
On the
it.
other hand, remember I told you I wasn't quite done with Kronos? Yes, through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson. It's Kronos hardware to introduce time stamping to MLMP, and you will have a presentation on that effort later on in the presentation. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, but I saw another item on our pre-agenda too. And since I don't have a copy of it with me, I guess we won't take this any further right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. The next of the missions is the software upgrade planning mission. Currently, your SAP software that you have in your on-premise or local landscape is software that was acquired back in 2001. So SAP is 2011. SAP is continually releasing updates and service packs that add functionality and correct things in the system. There are several different ways to approach this software upgrade, and ultimately it's just laying out those alternatives and making a decision on the timing and how we do that. It is somewhat interrelated to the hardware infrastructure planning mission, because in a cloud-hosted scenario, an environment can be stood up very quickly with the current SAP software, and we could just migrate what's been done here. But that's just one of many alternatives.
Mr. Dale, I have a question for Ms. Guyard. Ms. Guyard, why wasn't our software updated since 2011? I mean, time's moving on. Why haven't we been updating our software?
Through Mr. Chairman, because it is non-standard to upgrade at the same time you're implementing. Generally, you upgrade, or you develop, you go live, you have a period of stabilization in your project, and then you upgrade. So you're talking a period of 4 years under a traditional approach, traditional non-local government approach. SAP, we would have upgraded it developed in a 2-year period, had a time of stabilization, and we would just probably be planning the upgrade. But because we're still in development, we don't want to put the municipality through further development and then go live on an old system and immediately be in a position of having to put the municipality through upgrade. So we are planning a parallel project. We're going to upgrade the software on a separate system, and we are going to continue development on our old system, and then we're going to merge them. It's going to be a miracle of events, but it is going to happen, and that is the plan that we've got for you, because that's efficient and effective, and it's the best way that I can see for you to do it.
What's the cost of this upgrade going to be? Do we know?
Through the chair, Mr. Chairman, we are budgeting $3.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
And the last mission on this slide to talk about is the testing plan mission. The reason to call this out is I think that oftentimes in implementation testing is one of the things, in addition to project preparation and blueprint, that tend to get shortcut. And I think it's critical, particularly with where we're at right now in the Synergy program, to make sure that we utilize all of the testing methodologies and approaches that are available. So that goes beyond just a developer unit testing things to and user acceptance testing from the functional user committee to implementing and using automated testing tools that can do scripting and load testing and performance testing the system before we go live. So that's another area where I think we can leverage some of the quality assurance that SAP can provide to help us structure that strategy. The last 3 missions, and I won't spend a whole lot of time because Julie will be talking more in detail about the Kronos time consolidation mission. And I think Kate's already touched on it as well, but the purpose is to evaluate the different Kronos platforms that are in place currently in the municipality, gather requirements, and figure out a path forward. Intertwined with that is a mission that we are actively working on over the next 3 weeks, actually. And we've been planning for it, but we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of it over the next 3 weeks. And this is the time evaluation mission. And that is essentially to have Kronos and SAP and municipality employees coming together to look at the different pros and cons of doing time evaluation within Kronos or having it within SAP. Ideally, all those parties will come together with a unified point of view. We'll see how that goes over the next several weeks. If there is not a unified point of view, then I would expect the alternatives will be presented to the Functional Steering Committee for a recommendation going forward.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
So again, this will be driven by both budget and business decision. It will, because I with the Q&A, SAP had felt that it should be SAP, but now we have both parties in the room, and both parties, everybody will be looking what is the most cost-effective approach for our needs.
I certainly think cost and long-term
Value.
sustainability are principal factors that if I were on the functional steering committee, I would be weighing in to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And then the last of these 12 missions is the gate check planning mission. On the first slide there, I'd highlighted with those green triangles some of the significant gate checks, but we're also engaging the SAP Quality Assurance Organization to perform smaller scale engagements than what you had several months ago, but they will be recurring on an ongoing basis, particularly where there are trouble areas, to make sure that to get an independent assessment that we're on track. So with that, those were the end to my slides, and at this point I'll be turning things over to the SAP senior project managers to each give you a briefing on their work stream, and then also we'll be giving you a briefing on the Kronos work stream. The slides that you'll be seeing, and it's kind of to wrap up my thoughts on this, we put together a format that potentially could be used to inform you, whether it's on a monthly basis or, I would like that I'm hopeful that today is the beginning of an ongoing dialogue that we're having, that the Synergy program is having with you, so that you are getting information from us. We're providing it proactively, and continue to keep you apprised of our progress and any challenges we have, and also to let you know successes and that we're moving this forward in the right direction. I've asked that the senior PMs, their slides are principally focused on activities that they are conducting right now in the project preparation phase, but I asked that their comments be a little bit more global than that. They'll introduce themselves and also talk to you about their vision, current challenges, and kind of the plan that they see unfolding for their teams within the next several months.
Mr. Dale, Ms. Gray Jackson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's a Kronos question, and if you're going to answer my question later on as we move on, then that'll be fine, but I'm going to ask it now. Okay, so what's I know that, at least I believe that AWW, MLNP don't have time stamping right now.
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, no, they do not.
Okay, and MLNP's time stamping module through a change order or whatever it's going to be is coming before us on Tuesday. So what's the value in requiring that MLNP and AWW get the time stamping module? What's the value in that? And let me follow it up before you answer that with what's the value in that, and what would be the value in eliminating time stamping altogether? And the reason why I say this is because I don't remember, I've worked for a lot of years of my life, and I never clocked in, okay? And I know that a lot of our employees, number one, there are issues with time stamping. Number two, I know that a lot of our employees feel like they're not trusted because of this one module, and it's disheartening when I hear comments from different employees. So with that said, those are my two questions, and if you want me to ask them all over again, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, I understand the time stamping policy is a policy that the mayor and the executive leadership implemented a few years ago to improve accountability throughout the general government. And as the plan was originally conceived, all of government would be time stamping. So when an employee came to work, they would be clocked in, and when an employee left from work, they would clock out. So the ML&P time stamping initiative was part of that overall plan, and I think from my personal perspective, for a utility which is ratepayer based, it's probably a good idea to have them clock in and clock out. I think it improves accountability. To answer the second part of your question, you could decide not to clock in and clock out. You would still use the Kronos system to enter your time in, and it would still flow under the current design into SAP, and you would still have the similar reporting, but the accountability of someone knowing that they're at work and knowing that they're in place would be taken away.
Ms. Gray Jackson, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Yeah, I have a follow-on, I think, on that. They were talking at one point in time about remote clocking. Job function is an issue in terms of where do you start, where do you stop, kind of thing, and it may not be back at the office. And so, what kind of allowances have you put in for that?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Steele, I think it's important to know that the mayor is not dogmatic about this policy. The mayor is, it's his desire, I think I can speak appropriately, that it's the mayor's desire for accountability that people clock in and clock out. However, the mayor himself has said that if it's not feasible, if it's not an
What we do.
enhancement to
Okay.
the accountability, then he's not going to push it forward. For example, he's having us look at APD and AFD next to see, is it feasible, can it be done, is it beneficial, and then he'll make his decisions on those more complex entities.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand and can appreciate accountability, but it's still troubling to me. In the 21st century, we're having our employees who've never had to punch a time clock before, and now they have to. Plus, there are issues with that module of Kronos, as we all know. So the document for MLMP is coming before us on Tuesday. So if the Assembly decides not to approve that document, what's the effect? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson, the effect is that the timekeeping system Kronos that is currently in use will continue to be used as it's currently configured.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
I think I got that question answered, but it was kind of on the same line. For my money, for our money that we've already spent, I'd rather not spend money on something like chasing a management philosophy. I'd rather look at more functional, what's the end outcome. Accountability sounds good, but it's really a management philosophy of whether you're a theory X leader or a theory Y. Thank you.
There are no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to introduce Paul Cotton, who's a Senior Project Manager for our Finance and Logistics team.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Cotton. I am the Senior Program Project Manager for Finance and Logistics. Just to give you a quick background on myself, I just figured out 30 years experience in program and project management, ranging from the military all the way up to delivering large, complex SAP and Oracle ERP system programs. Some of my clients include American Airlines, Citibank, Nextel, Gildan Windows was my most recent, where I developed and designed a new treasury system for them. My experience is in delivering complex projects, coming in from the onset, defining them, establishing the organization of the projects, and then putting the teams together to deliver those projects. I've also had experience in coming into projects where there have been issues and working with the organization and with program teams to actually resolve those issues. One of my philosophies is, and I think it was Henry Ford that said it, surround yourself by people that are better than you. And I've had the distinct pleasure of putting a team together, 6 core people who have, I think, in total about 160 years combined experience in public sector and SAP implementations. And they are key to the success of what we're doing. And we have taken an awful lot of time over the course of the last 3 months. I joined in January to assess what has been produced from the QA audit, to look at that and to establish how we move forward and what needs to be done for us to move forward. We have judiciously applied the SAP accelerated solution, which I think is the right move for this organization and for this project. And we are at the point where we are working through the final aspects of document inventory. So to your point earlier, looking at what has been produced and what we can utilize when we go forward into the next phase, which is blueprinting or design. Beyond that, we'll get into realization and development. But the key thing that we have done to this point is build the foundation. Build the foundation for success. And that, in no large part, is to do with the people we have. Not just people from my team, what I call the core delivery team, which are external to the municipality, but also all the people that have been working on this project in the municipality for the last 3 to 4 years. And spending time with them and understanding that the constraints and the issues that they have, and listening to them and making sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Amen.
Making sure that we develop a framework for successful delivery.
Mr. Holman has a question, sir.
More of a comment. First of all, I appreciate that approach. And that was one of my frustrations from earlier. I thought I was hearing that we were, for lack of a better term, scrapping the last 3 to 4 years. I didn't think that I was hearing that from prior, but I candidly, and I apologize, I have missed a couple of meetings due to checking on aging parents in the lower 48. But I guess I'll close with, I originally heard you speaking. I thought, looking at your resume, I'd hear more of a southern LA accent from lower Alabama, Amarillo or Abilene. But I think you're probably more lower Abbotsford in Sussex.
That's true.
Actually, I always sound from Far East Alaska.
Far East. Welcome aboard. I love your
Very Far East.
Thank you.
You can see it from Sarah's house.
Please continue, sir. There are no other questions right now.
The Philo landscape's expansive and fairly complex. It actually contains 13 modules, ranging from controlling through general ledger, and you actually have a document that I've prepared that explains the modules, gives you a quick overview of the modules. When I joined, it was just at the time of the completion of the QA audit, and it was like drinking from the fire hose. It was totally smoked what I put myself into. But as I worked through it, I came to the realization that the health of the Philo piece is very good. We actually really only have 2 areas of concern, and that's accounts payable and project system. I've put 2 extremely good people on assessing those two issues, together with Bill Welch and VJ Leopold. I mean, they have very close attention on looking at those and bringing those back to a low level of risk.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
So, one of the issues, the grant management is no longer an issue,
No, we have issues.
but it's, that you feel it can be integrated pretty.
We're working through them. I think going forward, we have, we are at a point where we
didn't know
have a
that.
defensible plan to resolve the issues.
Oh. Sorry, I'm this.
They can't hear you on the phone if you're not in the room.
I'm just terrible. And as far as you're saying, with the problems with the accounts payable, is that a software design problem, or is it just
It's a
just
process. It's a process
problem?
which we're dealing with.
And then one of the other issues were some additional features for FERC.
Yes, and I am not particularly familiar with FERC, but it was a recommendation from SAP that we utilize FERC and go to a single set of accounts.
You have to.
We have taken on that recommendation and we're working through it. If you'd like to know more, I can definitely take that offline with the appropriate people.
Thank you.
There don't appear to be more questions, sir. Please continue.
So as I was saying, we have a fairly expansive and complex landscape. The good news is we have overall
They have
good
no
health
choice
as far as
to do for it's different. You know that.
the products concerned within
It's a whole
Philo.
nother set of accounts.
Our accomplishments since I've been here, which is the end of January, the team has reviewed all the associated documents that were produced for Philo. We've inventoried those. We've gone through an extensive inventory process for all business streams. That was as a base. That was as a result of the QA findings. We have, between Philo and HCM, we've jointly developed a set of processes that will help us now get to the next step, which is to capture where all the documentation is, its location, and then go through a detailed audit of, is it complete? How complete is it? what needs to be done and the amount of effort it will take to get it done. So that will be our next step. Then subsequent to that, we'll go into blueprinting. As I said, I think I've built out, I'm happy to be being able to build out a really strong management team. We also have an extremely experienced, knowledgeable, capable group of people in functional leads from the municipality. I also jokingly say that they're all very or opinionated. So quite often I'm sat listening to a lot of opinion, and we take it on board. I mean, they're all passionate, and that's what I want to continue to have happen. You know, 3 years is a long time for a project, and I'm delighted to say that they still have passion, they still want to get the job done, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make that happen. That's about it.
Question from assembly members. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked a little bit about scope creep here this afternoon, and I was wondering, do you think the scope of this project has creeped quite a bit since it was started, or with your experience, where are we as far as?
Mr. Peterson, since I've only been here since January, this isn't the whole I believe we're aware that there is a potential for scope creep. Has there been scope creep? I believe it, yes, but I'm not sure how much. As far as will that continue, absolutely not. We're putting in processes and frameworks that will ensure that any form of scope creep will have to go through the appropriate organization, which is a change control board. And as Dan and Glenda said, that is part of the functional steering committee's remit, is to make sure that change is fully controlled and fully considered. I mean, change has to be based on business benefit. That's first and foremost. Beyond that, then you can get into technology, you can get into benefits to people, but first and foremost, it's about business benefit.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions we have right now.
I'd like to next introduce Roberto Sands, who's the Senior Project Manager for Human Capital Management.
Good afternoon. Like with Paul, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I believe that in most cases, having someone so highly specialized may be a detriment with the breadth and depth of knowledge. In this case, I find it to be the biggest asset for the municipality in my case. I've spent the last 18 and a half years with one sole responsibility, which is delivering SAP HCM projects. Prior to the last 18 and a half years, I was an HR practitioner. That is my entire professional career has been in the area of human resources. I believe I've completed full life cycle projects in the neighborhood of 10 full life cycle projects, including 2 upgrades for some of the largest companies and organizations in this country and globally. I also feel that some of the experience that I bring, I've noted, is that like the municipality, I have successfully migrated several companies from PeopleSoft to SAP, and who have also used Kronos and used Kronos successfully. So that is some of the experience that I bring to the table for the municipality. I'm very pleased to be here, certainly. Like Paul, I want to echo his comments that I arrived 2 months ago. My first week was the week that SAP presented the QA review, and it certainly was on the HCM side, not a very pleasant picture that was painted. I am encouraged that I believe that there is good work that has been done. I am most encouraged by the level of engagement by the municipality in the areas of employee relations, benefits, and payroll. The commitment that the staff has and the directors that are here have is, without question, some of the best that I've seen. And I know that's going to be one of the biggest factors for our success. As Paul also indicated, I think that one of my main responsibilities at this point is to assemble a team both from the municipality and from the consulting resources that will ensure success. I pride myself in saying that I have never been on a project that has not gone live, and this will not be the first. This will certainly not be the first that we will not go live. We will go live and we will be successful. And the commitment that SAP, Peloton, and other organizations have had to ensure that I have the best staff available or the best resources available to get this done is without question. As I mentioned, with the SAP QA review, I believe you know that there were several areas of high critical concern, and that is where the HCM team is spending the majority of their time right now. We know that documentation was raised as an area of concern, as has been mentioned before, and so along with Philo teams and other teams, we have engaged the last several weeks in doing a document inventory and to assess the state of the documentation and to see how it compares to what has been built in the system. And I think to Mr. Holman's point, in the HCM area as well, we will be utilizing a lot of the configuration that has been done. This is not a throwaway. But that said, there are several areas that you've heard about the enterprise structure, and to continue the analogy that Kate used about the house and the architectural design, in some ways we have built the frame of the house on a poor foundation. And we need to solidify that foundation. And so we will, over the course of the next several months, be re-engaging with the municipality and with the experts from SAP and from Peloton that we've brought in to ensure that we can configure that to be a successful and long-term solution for the municipality. Tom also mentioned the work that we are doing right now to evaluate the best solution from a time evaluation perspective. We have two very formidable systems in Kronos and SAP. Both, we believe, offer strengths and opportunities, but also weaknesses and threats in terms of which system should we use to be the most durable, sustaining, and most efficient, because ultimately our mandate is clear. We have to pay employees correctly, and we deal with 2,700 auditors. And when I say that is that every single time a paycheck is received, we are being audited for that accuracy. And so my commitment is 0% failure. I cannot afford for any employee to not be paid correctly. But to ensure that that happens, the time must be correct, the employee master data must be correct, the processes must be the most efficient, their benefits. So all of those things to the ultimate accountability of the paycheck, I know to be my charge and my mission from this organization. So with that, I certainly yield to any questions.
We have a question for you, sir. Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am. Then Ms. Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to say I really appreciate your level of confidence. And please don't take offense, but your ego is welcome in this case, very much so. And you're welcome. And also, you talk about your involvement with Kronos and implementation of Kronos. Did they all include the time stamping piece?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, yes, in multiple instances, we have had organizations. I will say that typically those are in the manufacturing areas that I've worked, where time stamping is certainly a requirement. A lot of times with collective bargaining agreements, that is the case. So yes, I have worked in that environment as well, yes, ma'am.
How about globally? Is timekeeping globally accepted?
Globally, it's not as common to have time stamping systems. Personnel are most likely paid from an exception time basis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
And this is becoming my standard question, but as you're looking between the two systems, you're also looking at costs of development to this point and integrating that into sustainability and effectiveness and efficiency, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Ms. Johnson.
So it's budget driven and business making decisions.
Absolutely, and so we were clearly charged with looking at all of those aspects in terms of what makes the most amount of sense as we move forward with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez, for I'm sorry, Sines?
Yes.
Sines, for addressing the issues of what we're not throwing away, I guess. I understand, solid foundation, not solid, has to be done. maybe even some dismantling and starting over in some cases. I get that. One of the concerns I have is, and you may not be able to answer this, and we can hold until the end. I'm concerned about going forward. In the past, the last 4 years, we've had to, for lack of better terms, borrow or steal people from work units from around the municipality. And in the meantime, work has to go on. Reports have to be filed, paid, people have to get paid, personnel aspects, computer aspects, things like that. Do you anticipate that's going to continue, or we're having to borrow staff from different work units? And if that's the case, are we backfilling? And I don't know if anybody can answer that currently now, or if it's
I'll certainly take the, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Homan, I'll certainly take the first part of that question. We certainly know that the only way to success is to have the active participation of subject matter experts in all areas of the municipality to ensure that we're designing the system to meet all of the requirements. And so that does obviously require people to have, and we've been very clear that we expect in many cases 100% allocation or close thereof to the people that are working on the project so that we can take this home. As to the second part, I'll defer to others in terms of how the backfill is actually working. And I was just committed that we will have the resources we need to be successful.
And Ms. Garrett, you can wait till the end if you'd like. I don't want to have our people not a chance to address.
I was having such a good time back there, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Honeman, before you in the first quarter budget revision are a series of positions that have been built to ensure that you'll have 100% MOA engagement at all times going forward.
And I guess the next part is, would that then not require people having to be basically, having to give up duties that are normally assigned in another department to come to help bring this on? I mean, that's been a big concern right now, almost 4 years into it. A lot of our work units have been working short as it is, even shorter when they're committing their time to this project.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Mr. Training, Mr. Honeman, we've also added backfill resources, which are through local contractors such as Altman Rogers, to bring in people that can say, for example, oversee grants. We can't have contractors supervise employees. So if we're using grants as an example, the strategy was we'll bring in contractors that can do the supervisory review of the work, and then someone like Tom Fink, the controller, would come and supervise the actual employees.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Guard, you mentioned backfill. So where do you think the backfill where should the emphasis be for placing backfilled employees? I hope I'm clear on my question.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, we've tried to, so where we have taken full-time, like the grants supervisor, is going to be 100% dedicated to SAP. We will then hire, we currently have Altman Rogers kind of in training mode, and we've hired Altman Rogers to take over her duties with the exception of supervision. So that's how we're calling it backfill. We also have added municipal employees to work on the engagement. So generally your team lead is that grants management supervisor, supervisory person, tons of experience, best person to put on SAP. Underneath them, we have added range 14 subject matter expert, which will be someone that's a new employee, so that you have a supervisor and a junior person understanding and knowing and becoming a subject matter expert in that. So what we have proposed to you is fairly complex. The use of external contractors and the invigoration, if you will, of the municipal resources to work on the project.
Thank you, Ms. Guard.
Mr. Evans, question? Okay. Go ahead, Kate. Thank you.
Before I move on, with your indulgence, I wanted to clarify one thing, because I think it's come up a number of times, and I want to be clear that we are not going through a from ground zero blueprinting exercise. We're filling gaps, essentially. And in terms of rework, or having lost investment that you've already made, we're not looking to redo things that don't need to be redone. So where things were properly documented, properly configured, great, we move on. I will say that, and I'm already aware of some areas where To give you an example, custom code was written. So there's a difference, and if you're already familiar with these concepts, I apologize in advance. But there is a difference between customization and configuration. Configuration is what SAP provides in a standard capacity, where you can set tables up or flags or workflows and those kinds of things, and it just works within the software, and that's how you make different business processes work for different customers. Customization is where you're actually writing new code and integrating it into the software to do things. So where we're finding cases where code was written or the system was customized to do things that we know can be handled through standard configuration, we're going to rip the code out and do the configuration. And the reason for that is maintaining custom code is over the life cycle of your SAP implementation. So I'm talking 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, whatever. It makes it very expensive and very difficult to maintain systems where you've done a lot of customization. So to the maximum extent possible, we want to be doing configuration and not customization. So I hope that clarifies some of the things that I think have come up on a recurring basis.
How much customization we ran into, because in many cases the customization is not applicable from update to update, unless they wrote it correctly.
So I don't have a complete inventory yet. We're going through that process right now, but I think you are correct in saying that when you do those customizations, when you start applying SAP updates over time, that's where you start running into problems. Testing your updates over time become more complicated, and then things have a tendency to break easier.
As you're going through this, if you'd let us know what areas you find a lot of this customization being done in,
Absolutely.
we'd appreciate that.
We can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Ooh,
if
it's
I may,
cold in
Ann,
here.
can you answer the question on how many customizations we have?
So this is a normal thing that happens with large projects, and you do try to keep your customizations to a minimum. So when I came on board at that point in time, you had 55 customizations done. I believe 23 are in Philo. There were like 18 in HCM, and there were others. Some of them are user exits, which are minimal, that may just stand, but you have to customize it because you have to get out of your software at that point in time for whatever reason. Some of them were a lot more detailed, and that would be like Kelly Shift. There was a lot of customization that was done around Kelly Shift. The municipality uses a 27-day cycle. Everybody else in the lower 48 that we know of does a 28-day cycle. So there are customizations that were done, and I can provide a complete list, but that's basically the feel for the 55 that we have.
Now you're changing those customizations back to configurations where possible, or?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to rip out customized code wherever we can, because it's very difficult to maintain a system that is highly customized. So Lucinda's strategy all along was vanilla, and I think that was your strategy as well, and it's the strategy we're carrying forward. So if they're necessary and they can withstand change control and functional steering review, then they will stand. But if they were not, or if the SAP system experts say it can be done within SAP natively, we will take it up.
With the, you're talking about Kelly shifts. Are we dealing with the unions' interests in these? Were they done for the unions, or because Kelly shift, I think, relates mainly around police and fire. So,
Mr. Chairman, there are a variety of reasons you do customizations. At the time, they believed that the SAP system could not handle the CBAs that we negotiated. There are now views that SAP can natively handle those. So many of the customizations very likely had to do with the union. Many of them also had to do with tasks in the financial system that we believed were necessary to continue to provide financial information. So they're all going to be examined. I think some of them will stand. Some of them will go.
thank you, Ms. Gaillard. Ms. Jennifer.
Actually, you answered it. I was just, I mean, the Kelly shift is something that I can't imagine we'll be able to do by a standard system, but I'd be interested, could we? Do we? And this is kind of off point. But.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Johnson, yes, that is something that we're definitely actively looking at. It was brought up in the SAP QA evaluation, and we're looking at how we can bring that back to a standard set of configuration rather than customization.
A question for assembly members. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, I'd like to introduce Greg Campbell, who is our Senior Project Manager for Organizational Change Management.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank all of you for inviting myself and our team here today to talk with you. My background experience, I too have about 30 years worth of experience in bouncing around the world and implementing software. Some of those examples were on my resume that you've seen, but like the one in Australia, that was at Energy Australia. That upgrade was $36 million, not excluding the new data center and move to the new data center. That was from contract through completion. We were on time and we were 1%, just under 1% over budget. The operations there was also named as the SAP Upgrade of the Year. And we were also named as the Project Management of the Year for SAP. So we also run projects at Conagra Foods. That was $264 million. It ran over a 5-year period. The big point coming out of that was once we've completed our blueprint, we had no changes at the time we were fully live. There was no scope creep whatsoever. So these things can be attacked as we start to address those issues and we maintain the right controls throughout the process. The part of that is dealing with organizational change management. And within that environment, let me say that a project has 3 main pillars. It has the technology part, and that's the software and the hardware and the facilities and those that are thrust to it. It has the process part, and that deals with how everything is put together. And then it has a people part. If any one of those pillars gets damaged, and it puts risk to the overall project. So what the organizational change management piece is it looks at saying, how do we deal with people? How do we start to prepare those individuals with what the change is going to come, and do they want that change? The second part is to say anything that's non-technical in nature falls under the organizational change management umbrella to make sure that we're prepared and ready to accept those as they come through. And then the third is knowledge and experience. We have to be able in a position to do knowledge transfer as well as the training that goes across to ensure that the municipality will not only be able to accomplish their goals today, but will be post-go-live, be able to continue into the future so that we can make sure you can maintain those systems and you have the knowledge here without having the reliance on additional outside sources. Okay, that's kind of where we're starting this particular approach as we move through. The main parts of organizational change management, some people say it's real fuzzy because it's very wrapped around the psychology of the operations, of the people, and how they're going to interact with not only the system, but with each other. It's people that run the municipality. It's not a system. It's the people who are going to use that system to get the information that they need to make a decision in their hands as they make that decision. So they have to understand that they're going to use that system to continue to work and to have the right information at the right time. So as the executive committees, as the assembly, we have to look at supporting The idea of, yes, we're going to be able to implement this, and that we want to have this accomplished. And from the assembly down through the executive committee, down to the lower levels within the ranks, to ensure that those participation, that they're ready for that change, and they know what's coming down the pike, so no one gets surprised. The communications portion is also under the realm of the organizational change management, and that is to make sure that people have the right information at the right time so they understand and don't have the fear of the change that's coming to them. Then we have to look at saying what roles are going to be altered. Individuals' jobs will change via the project. We have to make sure we map back where those changes are going to be, ensure that we then map that to the skill sets that are going to be required. And then we have to go out and train the people to ensure that they have the knowledge in order to be able to accomplish their goals in the new environment. And then we've got to measure it. We've got to watch as we're going through and put in measurements so that we can say, are we getting to the people to the right knowledge set? Are they absorbing it? Can they go through this process? Then there's another piece. There's two real ways of information flow, and I'm sure you've all heard these before. First one's a very formal way. You know, it's letters, it's posters, it's all sorts of stuff that go out to try and get the message out. The second is the informal. And this goes to one of the questions that were brought up earlier. Who's going to be full-time on the project and who's not? We have to have certain individuals who are going to have to be full-time because their knowledge and experience has to be part of this. But the others, we want to see participants in the workshops, in the blueprinting workshops. We don't want to see them as full-time. Because, sir, you have a question?
I just was getting.
Sorry, Mr. Holman.
No, I'll wait till you're done.
Oh, we want them to be able to take the message from the workshops, what's going on there, what's being designed, back to the people, so that they can have their input to bring it back to the workshops again and continue that cycle so that we have the right information when the design is put together.
Mr. Holman, sir.
I'm glad you brought that up, and in fact, that's one of the things that I was trying to get at with backfill, who's going to be from permanent party, if you will. I'm forecasting a year, 2 years. I don't know how long it's going to take. You guys are probably going to get there. But let's say 3 years from now, and contractors, consultants, people that are non-municipal employees are gone. Frankly, as I started out, and you guys are probably aware that there's an election just around the corner, and we're likely to have a change in staff, at least at the executive level. Many people may decide to leave or maybe bring on new people. And my concern is, and this is where the old philosophy of knowledge is power, and of course share the knowledge is how I look at it, share the power, share the knowledge. There are some people that are going to have the knowledge, and Ms. Jared, you're one of them. Maybe perhaps you're here in 2 years, maybe you're not.
I can assure you, sir, I will not be here.
Okay. My point is that where do we effectively continue this continuity of knowledge to share that knowledge, share that power to continue to move on, because it'll probably be just as apparent to you and maybe even frustrating for you as it is for us. We were told many years back, 9 million, 9 months, maybe a year, and we're going to go live. We're now 4 years down the road, we're approaching 40 million, and we're not there. And so my point is continuity of information, sharing the knowledge, sharing the power. I'm concerned that, not being able to team up, school up, these people walking out the door like this, and they've got all the knowledge of their contractors and consultants are gone. And we've got a project that we're either done or it's working and we have nothing to do. So I've heard several times, I'm kind of relieved to hear that some of this plan will continue through the life of the SAP. I think that was our failure with PeopleSoft, but that's backdoor stuff. That's not where we're going. That's where we're headed. So I thank you for that information because I think it gives me some relief that going forward we'll have that training and that knowledge. And hopefully I'm tasking everybody, share the knowledge. Rick, you're leaving out the door here soon. Share the knowledge, share the power.
Other questions from assembly members? Please continue. Don't see any other questions.
Thank you. This is one of the charges that has been, how can I say this, expressed to me when I came to join, was we want to be in the position that someday, when this is over, we don't need consultants. Okay? The whole idea of a consultant is to work themselves out of a job, basically. And so what we want to make sure is that the knowledge transfer is not just today, but we have turnover in staff. How are we going to train those individuals when they come in to be able to be effective in their job? That's part of the training strategy, is to say, how do we bring that new person onboard them, make sure they're trained and ready to actually sit down and get to work. When we start to look through, we have a lot of tribal knowledge here, and we got a lot of people that are really dedicated. But what happens if one of those individuals has an accident?
Right.
Or one of those individuals is not in the position where they can continue on, or decides to move on? That knowledge walks out the door. And part of an integrated system is to capture that knowledge, the processes, what we need to do in order to take the next step forward, and continue on. Even if there was something that was catastrophic, and no one wants to have anything happen to anybody. But we have to be prepared in case it does. And that's part of the organizational change management approach, is to say, where is that happening? There are other pieces that are going into the strategy that has not been approved. It has now been proposed, is going through, dealing with how do we deal with the IT portion of this project, and how does it live into the future?
I got a question.
Again, it rolls back into the organizational change management. So it's kind of it's not just today. It's tomorrow. It's the next upgrade that you're going to do in several years. How are we making sure all the documentation, training, and pieces are in place, the right people are here, and we can pass that knowledge on as we move into the future? That's organizational change management. It's make sure that we're out. We got kind of 3 rules that kind of go through this. Rule 1, bad news doesn't get better with age. Okay? Fix problems when they're small. Let us know. Get the information in so that we can fix things and move on forward. Rule 2 is everyone gets their say, but not everyone gets their way. We have to be in a position where we take in, because no one person has all the answers. But by bringing it together, the whole team can come up with that solution, and we can then implement it. And rule 3 is check your ego at the door. Don't let your ego stand in the way of success to the overall project. So as we start to look at where are we going in the future, we need to take the individuals who are the senior management and have them come on and be in the position where their questions are all answered, so that they're ready to back the operations all the way down to the level, so that we look at the staffing. How can we backfill people? How can we cross-train individuals? And then you have to look at, in the future, there should be looking at saying, how am I going to cross-train someone just in case an individual leaves and we don't have a hole there? You got lots of dedicated people doing lots of work, but we got to take a look at that along the way as well to ensure that we're going to be able to continue operations.
Mr. Campbell, we got another question for you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'd like to know is who is determining what resources should be used and where? Who's making that determination? And maybe you're not the person to answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, that's been my responsibility in conjunction with working on teams to lay out and identify the organization chart for every single module that we have, and to identify the resources that are going to be used to get the module 3 completion.
Okay, thank you. If I can follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Goddard. But you just said you're not going to be here in 2 years, okay? And more power to you. I wish you well. In the meantime, that the person who takes over for making that determination, what qualifications does that person need to have in order to make sure they're making the right decisions on where our resources are going or not going?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, you're right. My view in answering your question was short. It was just through the period of implementation. The longer view is going to be taken care of by the Functional Steering Committee, which is going to continue on functional steering committee to make sure that the resources, our requests are brought through the executives and up to the assembly.
Thank you, Ms. Gallard. And can I just follow up?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, and I need to ask this question because I've heard it mentioned several times, the life of SAP. What is the life of SAP?
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, the life of SAP is the next 50 years.
50?
50.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Gallard.
Ms. Garrett, I appreciate all you do with this because you inherited a house that didn't have a certificate of occupancy. They were building it, trying to live in it, and it was built on sand. So I appreciate your efforts when you came here to try and build structure to this thing. And that's the game we keep trying to live with, is trying to put the structure back in the building because the building existed on sand and it doesn't last. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll continue.
Well,
Well, it is what it is. And
oh yeah. I like when birds are. We need one
I
right
like,
now.
we're over yellow.
No, we just need to get this done. I'm gonna go talk to the bird.
Do you know how many meetings there'll be? I asked them, when's it will go live?
Oh yeah.
Next week.
About two hands and then another 2 hands. You know?
Just crazy.
No, ma'am, I took no insult. I'm proud to wear my heart on my sleeve, and there's a lot of passion there, ma'am. Right. And I hope to be out of here before
Your permission to ownership next to you. We need to pick up room for Rich.
Exactly where they are. They're across from.
Yeah, this is where the, where Starbucks is.
What's the organization?
Great job on this project.
Have they already? Well, I talked to her a little bit. She said, I just want to make sure she yeah.
Sometimes my phone text it. Can you do that? That would be better. Hey, Barbara, do the email and let me see. Hey, Ernie. How you doing? So I have a friend who's getting ready to buy a house in Palm Springs. I haven't been there. Yeah.
There may be some components inside
With your permission, I've been asked to move my seat, so...
Well, move your seat over here. I don't mind. Good heavens.
I had to add another person to the table.
It's fine. Missed my gavel. That's right. I just want to get this thing going so we can get out of here at 4 o'clock. If everybody return to their seats, please, we need to get this meeting going on. We've got about 55 minutes left.
I'm back. Really? Okay.
So warm.
Well, you two are invited.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Where is Miss Geyer at?
I knew I wasn't dreaming about that hardware thing. Let me show you, because I had Barbara send me the agenda.
I know you're not dreaming either. I just don't remember where it is, how much
It's
it was for.
$2.2 million.
Now, is this for...
Here it is, systems, hardware, and professional services from Worldwide Technology for the MOA, $2.2 million.
Okay. 2.2?
Yeah. You gonna ask the question?
No, you can't.
All right. No, I'm having no problem doing it.
Let's get going. Where's Kate? Oh, there's Kate there. Miss Guyard, ma'am. We need to get this meeting wrapped
If
up.
I can
and
ask
done.
this first, really quick.
Miss Gray Jackson has a question for you, ma'am. She was looking at the schedule, the agenda for Tuesday, and she has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The good news is that I wasn't dreaming, and there is an item on our agenda for systems, hardware, software, and professional services for $2.2 million, and I'd just like a little bit of information on that since we're talking about hardware. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson, that is an ability to buy off, I believe, a state contract. So that's coming from ITD, and that's not related to SAP. And that, I think you're going to give them the authority to procure off that contract, but individual procurements under it will come to you. And Mr. Ahern is here, and he can speak to you about that as well.
Take it off the record.
Lance, do you want to come forward?
You want to do it now? Go ahead, Ellie.
You know what? Thank you, Ms. Guyard and Mr. What's your name?
Ahern.
again? Mr. Ahern. No problem. It's
What are
not.
you
It has
drinking?
nothing to do with this. So we can deal with it on Tuesday if I have any more questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kate, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to continue by introducing the next senior project manager on our team, Tim Bernhardt, who is leading the integration team, but also has some extra duties today. We have two key roles yet to fill to really round out this core leadership team. Those are senior project managers for infrastructure and development, so we're actively looking for those candidates. Tim will be covering those areas as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Bernhardt. A little bit of background. I have it's my 9th year at SAP. All of it in the software delivery area. Prior to that, I worked at another software company, which was a SAP customer, and I was the HR operations manager. Managed a couple projects there too. And prior to working for that company, I worked for Telcom. At the time, it was our US West Quest, and now it's CenturyLink, so it's changed over the years. I was their HR information systems manager. Prior to that,
When he's done, I'm going to switch to
I
Chronos.
retired out of Windward after 22 years. Actually ran a lot of projects, responsible for a lot of people in a lot of gear, and had multiple direct reports. I think the highest at one point was about 240 people reporting to me, direct and indirect. So more than 30 years of leadership and managing projects and managing people. So the big question is, what is integration management? So as you heard from all the other project managers, everyone has like a distinct area. So integration, what it does is it covers two basic key areas, right? It's the project management methodology piece, to make sure we stay on track for that piece. Make sure all our plans are in place and that all the plans are followed. And then the other piece is the application piece. So the system has a lot of integration points. There's a technology piece to make sure all the integration is going to be in place correctly and supervised and monitored. And the project management piece, which also includes project schedule. And so I heard a couple things, and scope was one big concern, and how it's going to be controlled. So integration is a key part of that, integration management. So one of the things we're going to establish, when you heard all the things that we're doing, is we're going to establish a baseline of what the scope should be or what it was. Once we get that established, then we work from there, make sure all the requirements, there's requirements traceability, all the requirements are traced to all the documentation that they're doing. And then when we move into testing, we test based on what the baseline is for the scope and what the requirements are. This will help prevent the scope creep. So that's kind of the methodology that's used to make sure that we have control over the scope and the scope doesn't creep without it going through a change control board. So in a way, the integration management, I'm the gatekeeper. So I'm a gatekeeper for the methodologies, both SAP and project management methodologies. Application integration gatekeeper, technology side. And then also, I'm a gateway for the rest of the team to SAP. So if there's anything that they need to know, and we don't have that knowledge here on the team, I can contact my colleagues in SAP and get the information they need. So kind of a gatekeeper role too on that piece. And then I also heard some concerns about the knowledge transfer piece. So one of the big pieces of integration is solution management. And that's where we're going to get all this documentation, all the other project managers are working on. It's going to be put into one centralized place, one standard format, and all that knowledge will be accessible to team members going forward. 5 years from now, somebody new comes on the team, they can look at this stuff and understand what was done. Again, it's an SAP methodology that we're going to follow on that piece.
Questions from assembly members? Mr. Steele, sir.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if you're the one to answer it, but since you're the integration guy, I guess I'm just interested to know who's going to be here, who's going to be in and out, and who's going to be available by phone, that kind of thing, in terms of resources.
You mean as far as on-site present?
Yeah, in terms of your accessibility or availability.
I'm here every week.
Okay, and I guess it'd be nice to, at some point in time, hear that in all teams.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Most of the senior leadership team here, we have a schedule where we're on site for 3 weeks and working remotely 1 week. Personally, I'm accessible about 24 hours a day and even call my cell phone anytime. So I think that we are all continually available to be moving this project forward. It's not going to be something where we're here 2 weeks and then kind of everybody goes away for 2 weeks and everything shuts down. That we will be continually working on the project.
Thank you.
Other questions from assembly members? Thank you. Please continue to the next one.
So the other area I'm picking up right now is development infrastructure. Again, you already had an infrastructure pretty much established. You've been through all the way up to start testing your systems. So you have that piece that's already in place now. However, there are some things being looked at. You heard for the hardware and the software, right? So those options are going on right now, being reviewed. Work's going on that piece. And the other big piece that the team is working on is setting up solution management. So to make sure that's ready, so when we get to the next phase, all the functional consultants can start to put their documentation in Solution Manager or create new documentation in Solution Manager, which will be a very critical part.
Questions from assembly members? Any questions? Thank you. Let's go on to the one I think we'll have
Just
lots
want
of
to say
questions on.
I'm happy you
Ms.
have-
Johnston.
for what job you're doing. I'm happy you have the Marine background.
Let's talk about Kronos.
So at this point, yeah, I think we can transfer to Julie Collins to talk about the Kronos timekeeping consolidation initiative.
Mission, yes. I'm Julie Collins. I'm Senior Project Manager on the Timekeeping Consolidation Project, is what I've been calling it. I'm sorry, I have to take my glasses on and off, depending on what I look at.
We're all that age.
I come from an Alaskan IT background, and I am quite technical, which is beneficial for this project since it involves consolidating a number of systems. Some of my recent projects include data virtualization and business intelligence build out for with global synchronization for an oil and gas services company in Houston. I managed the data and analysis system. You might have heard it, Full-Time Housing Research Center. It's where everyone, the part that most people here would know about is when you put in for your energy rebate after you've upgraded your house. And commercial package implementation and related integrations at Massachusetts Telephone Association. So enough about the project. This project came about because each timekeeping system that exists, SAP will need roughly 6 interfaces to it. We have 5 timekeeping systems, which makes roughly 30 interfaces, and at the QA assessment, they recommended that we consolidate on one timekeeping system. So the timekeeping consolidation project was started in response to that need. Goals of the project are to consolidate timekeeping onto one instance of Kronos. Right now we have timekeeping on 2 instances of Kronos, 2 of Telestat, and 1 of WorkTech Time. And that involves gathering detailed functional, non-functional, and business requirements so that we know that any changes made are best suited to helping the city reach its goals. There are decision gates to decide, take punching, for instance. We'll gather the requirements, and then at that point, the leadership will make a decision about whether punching is appropriate for that unit or in that place. And then we'll implement the consolidation. So speaking of punching, the first section was to get MLMP's time stamping, and they have been a really great help to me and the business analysts. You will be seeing a purchase request, since it's sole source, I think on the 28th. And we have one more mission, and that's to support 2 other components. The time evaluation mission that Umberto is running to decide whether time evaluation should be a Kronos or SAP. We're supporting that, and we will be supporting human capital management's time and payroll by providing the requirements gathered or in any other assistance. Thank you.
Mr. Holdeman, sir.
It's okay if I do.
I'll go after him.
You may.
All right.
Let me go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Julia, and maybe this is also for Mr. Umberto Signs. Kronos. I know ML&P and maybe even AWU has been doing Kronos, correct? As a time management for Rick, is that correct? No?
Through the chair, we've been on Kronos since 2008 at MLP. We were the first to install it, but we use a schedule rather than time punching.
So my question would be, would SAP be able to use what we have existing without the timestamping,
Yes.
without going down that road?
Yes.
Can we integrate successfully without much issues? I mean, I understand that, when you're talking Apple versus Mac and PCs and all that kind of stuff, sometimes there's interfacing issues. And I know that gets more complex when you start talking Oracle versus SAP versus Windows versus. Can we make it work without much complexity without the timestamp?
Chair, Mr. Oderman, I'm not an expert on SAP, but I believe that the punching has no effect whatsoever.
Right.
On the
It's a policy
interface between
call.
Kronos and SAP.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Herman,
Go ahead.
I'll say definitively that there's no system requirement for the punching in order to make SAP function correctly. None whatsoever, sir.
Okay.
So, I don't know, again, it seems more simple if we're looking at an off-the-wall, off-the-shelf packaging without specializing or make it more complex. Vanilla, I think you used the term, Mr. Geyer, which would be, let's get to the electronic payroll and timekeeping. I think that's where we were wanting to go, away from the paper systems that we used to use in the past. And pay to the exception. Pay the, everybody works 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Anything beyond that's an exception. That's the issue that you have to deal with. I think that seems more efficient, more simple, more vanilla, and maybe that's just a policy statement on my part. I appreciate that.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Julie, for your presentation. And you say here that MLMP time stamping, the requirements are done. Can you be a little more explicit on what you mean by done, other than the document that's coming before us on Tuesday?
Oh, they have gone out and explored the campus for MLMP, determined where different devices would need to be placed, gone through the decision-making process to see who should be allowed to use mobile rather than a clock, or
Right.
who can clock in on their computer, what kind of software upgrades do we need, how will adding punching affect current reports, those kind of.
And if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, how much money was spent on that process?
Well, it was all, except for my time, it was all uni employees. So
And what was in terms of your time?
it's been the last month.
Right, but in terms of cost, please.
I don't know.
Okay.
My bill rate is, I have that one, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Good
Ms.
man.
Jackson, we spent approximately $35,000.
Thank you, Ms. Goddard. I appreciate that. And one more follow-up, Mr. Chairman, please. And I just want folks to know that I'm not just babysitting MLMP when it comes to time stamping. I've been against it from day one because I think our employers are all grown-ups, and it's a management issue as far as I'm concerned. And if it were up to me, I would get rid of time stamping throughout the municipality, especially considering the fact that it has no effect on the implementation of SAP. So I'm just putting it out there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hall, sir.
Yeah, I'm probably in a little different position in regard to this time stamping. I'm kind of baffled by the discussion. I was an employer for 43 years, and it really wasn't an option for me. I had a workman's comp audit every year with my insurance. I had employees from time to time that would go file agreements with the labor board about they weren't being paid correctly. And I'm going to tell you, they walked into my office and I didn't have time stamping. This thing about jotting it on a card, whether I did it or they did it, had no influence on them whatsoever. They wanted a time-stamped card was the only thing that was acceptable. So I'm kind of baffled by this question about time stamping. It's not whether I write it in or the employee writes it in. They wanted it on a card stamped. So that part baffles me again.
Any other questions from assembly members? This item. Looks like that's all the questions we've got for you. Thank you, ma'am. Kate?
Mr. Chairman, now we're going to talk about the system integrator and telecom. And if you guys, Alan and guys have been sitting here for several hours to accept the deal to go ahead and sit in the back and get a little bit of R&R. They will come up if we have time for when you have some questions. I do want to mention in this time space while they're moving that these individuals that you have before us are your consultants. The senior project managers are consultants that the municipality has hired directly. We can fire them if they do not do their job. They are not associated, with the exception of Mr. Dale, with SAP. They are not associated either with Peloton. They belong to you. They belong to us. And they have our interests as their primary motivation and their own desire to continue with the employment that we have given them through our contracts. I do want to mention that these people, these high-quality people, including Tom Dale, were first and foremost interviewed and reviewed by Ann Reed. So Ann Reed is our deputy program manager she was responsible for going through many resumes and ITVs and finding you the best people. No one got on this project if they didn't go for Andy. I did not interview. It is not my skill set. So Anne is now going to lead the project. She's worked here very diligently. I just wanted to say that you owe her a round of applause or thanks for her efforts, because she's done everything she could to give you the best team to carry forward. So, Anne,
Well, let's do it.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I do want to turn it over to Peloton. There's been many questions about, do we still have an SI? What is an SI? What is their role? In traditional implementations, in the implementations that you went through, the SI, system integrator, comes in and takes care of it all. You were not successful in that model twice. And many local and state governments are not successful with that model. So you changed the model, but you still have a system integrator. The system integrator is serving as a deputy program manager and also in a variety of different roles on the engagement. They're your SAP experts that are going to be turning the switches, but they are not in charge of this implementation. Neither is SAP. The Functional Steering Committee, the Executive Steering Committee, and the Program Management Team is in charge of this implementation. But we have put Peloton as a deputy role so that they have a senior management role, and they also are infiltrated completely and responsible for doing all the configuration of this engagement. So I did change the model. I would be happy to answer any questions on that model and how I think it mitigates your risk. But in doing all of this change, you can imagine that Peloton went through itself a very significant change. I removed the prior SI program manager. I wasn't satisfied that we were getting the best service. The president of the company, who's at my left, Rich Beggs, moved with the municipality through all those difficult changes. And he has been a partner, and I think he's your partner. And he is here to talk to you about his role. And please, I've told anyone that's talked to you to honestly, just tell the truth. If they're not happy with what I'm doing, tell the truth. Because it's only through telling the truth to you, the supervisors, the mayor, and the other people, that controls what I do, because I have a significant amount of control over this project. So please feel free to engage him in any way, or any of these people, to make sure I'm doing the right job for you. Mr. Beggs.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Rich Beggs, and it's a pleasure to be here today. A couple highlights of my background. I have a 25-plus year career today, and one of the things that I've had the privilege of doing is exclusively serving public sector organizations. Within that, even really focused on ERP efforts, and as I've tried to highlight here, the last 13 years, it's been very focused on SAP. 10 years before that, it was on PeopleSoft. One of the things that I've really enjoyed in public sector as well is being able to really focus and serve a lot of local governments. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of unique characteristics as well. My specific role that I've been asked to serve in and I'm glad to do is being a governance advisor. So really supporting and assisting that functional steering committee that you were introduced to, as well as the executive steering committee. I also have overall responsibility for making sure that we are providing everything that the municipality needs from our perspective and what's being asked of us. So I'm the one that's accountable from a Peloton perspective. Next slide, please. I think Ms. Guyard made a really interesting point. In terms of the role, I wanted to make sure it was evident to you how we are working. We really have been tasked and asked to provide the talent and the resources that have in-depth skills and experience, understanding how do they flip the switches, configure the product, and essentially making sure that the software operates to support your organization. There are a number of entities working across the team. We are we are really impressed with the team that's been assembled and that you've heard from today. We are integrating with all those folks. We do serve the program management area as a deputy program manager, and as I mentioned earlier, I'll personally be affixed to the project as well, helping make sure that we're supporting the steering committees that are in place. Kind of behind this slide, if you look to the next slide, this will just give you kind of a graphical feel of where we are helping the project. We're under each of the work streams. We have specific resources and skills in each one of the areas. And it's spent a lot of time making sure that we have the right people working within each of those teams. I'll pause there and ask if there are any questions.
I have a question.
Ms. Gray Jackson has a question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a replacement in place already for Ms. Reed? And I'm sure that's going to be difficult to do, but is there a replacement?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Gray Jackson. Ms. Reed is here for a few more weeks, and she is going to participate in the interviews. We do have a few resumes that we are looking at.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Trainer.
Mr. Beggs, on your major projects, you list San Diego. Tell me about their SAP experience. Because I heard they pulled the plug at $40 million or $50 million. Were they able to successfully implement it there?
They were, absolutely. I was actually with SAP when I worked on that project. They started with an integrator, and I think if you talk to the CFO there, who is still there, Mary Lewis, and she would say that the company that was hired did not have the right public sector skills. And so it's a very robust, very mature product, but there's public sector functionality that you really need the right skills and talent to know how to leverage that. SAP came in, and I was part of that team, and successfully helped them complete their implementation.
Do you remember how much they spent on it?
I don't recall that. I don't know the total. I'm sure Mary, we could reach out to Mary, and I'm sure she would share that.
I would just be interested in that. Because we're at about $43 million now and climbing, and so it becomes a question we have to ask. Thank you for letting us know they successfully did do it. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you. So what we've been hearing so far, maybe Mr. Geyer may, or someone from the team may help us, but what we're hearing so far apparently is the scope of the project, pre-planning and getting to realization, which I think is another term for the developmental blueprinting or whatever. What about the project plan? When can we expect to see going forward? I see the timeline stop somewhere around August, September. And when will we expect to see the project timeline from there with an estimate of completion and, perhaps the budgeting for cost or time? It just seems like there should be something soon. I don't know when we'll be able to see something like that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Honeman, your questions are always just in time for my presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about that after Peloton is done.
Okay. Then the next one, then, who gets to make the decisions on these people in this graph here? Who's vetting them to make sure that they're the very best people? I'm guessing it's not the folks that we heard from a minute ago. And I'm guessing they're all either SAP or contract through, is it Oxford or some, but anyway, who gets to, like Ann Reed, who gets to do the interviews for these people to say, hey, you're the person cleared for weird, we know you're the best to do this?
I think it would be appropriate for Ann Reed to answer that question.
Okay, so for a little bit of clarification, all the yellow boxes are Peloton's boxes. And so from the standpoint that Peloton has all of the expertise in public sector, generally speaking, Peloton would place those people there, and we would have the option then, if they didn't work out, to discuss with Peloton and get them replaced. It's been my experience in the last year and 3 months that they put in very good people, so therefore I don't have any concerns, and I would believe that Peloton would place them correctly.
Through the chair, Ann, have you not interviewed people that have been put through the Peloton that are now on the Peloton contract?
Yes, I have. Yep, not all of those, but yes, I have definitely interviewed them.
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, the strategy that we have now is no consultant gets on this engagement without going through Ann Reed, and a formal interview process, a formal write-up of that interview, and a recommendation. So the next MOA, Deputy Program Manager, will have the same role.
So it'll be under, I'm sorry, it'll be under which organizational department that they work under? Is that under your role, or treasurer, or finance, or?
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, as you can see, there's a Deputy Program Manager, MOA,
Correct.
that says vacant. That individual is our representative on that program management team. That person will do all the interviews and make recommendations to me.
And so what department will they be housed in?
Currently, Ms. Reed is housed in IT.
IT. And so that's where the PCN will exist under this, for this position?
I'm not entirely sure if Mr. Honeman is going to keep it there. I may move it into the CFO's office.
Right.
Anything else, sir? Please continue, Kate.
I think there's any questions for Peloton. This would be the time.
Any questions? We've got about 25 minutes left. Any other questions, assembly members? Not seeing any, Kate. Please continue.
I don't know what happened to that proposed budget. It's blank. Oh, there it is. Okay, so.
We don't have it.
Kate, we
It's
don't
gotten
have
a
it.
hand.
I'm sorry. I have it.
We get it.
Yeah.
So you don't need any money.
What, you can't read that?
Drama.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's fine. It's perfect.
I've got my phone there, I can make a copy.
I finished this 2 weeks ago. So, Mr. Chairman, we're handing you out the program budget. And as you look at it, I have a program budget proposal of $20,306,000, and I will be presenting a late agenda item requesting a borrowing from the lease program of $20,306,000.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Guyard, is this 20 million in addition to the 8.4 that's out there?
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, this supplants that $8.4 million. It went away.
Okay, so it's 7.4 now. So the 7.4 is gone. Okay, thank you, Ms. Guyard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
And so you have to refresh my memory, Kate. What was the number that we had originally for the approval of the borrowing? I remember there was a limit.
50 million.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Honeman, I know that whole process was confusing to you, as it was to me, but we went forward to you and requested $8.4 million. And we didn't feel confident enough that we had given you sufficient data and understanding of the project to move forward
So
with
tell
that.
me, what is
So
the
we
line?
lowered that number down to $1 million
20 million
to make
per
sure
year.
that we could retain SAP and Peloton through the period of time where we'd be seeking we had a better number and a better feeling for what the number was going. So we brought it down to $1 million, and now we're bringing forward a $20 million request.
Mr. Honeman.
Just to follow up, I'm sorry, we approved you have to help me here. I apologize. Maybe
$1
you
million.
had-
$1
We
million.
approved if you will, an authority for your office to the municipality to loan against a certain dollar amount. I can't remember, what was the ceiling on that?
50 million.
Through the chair, the ceiling is 50.
One other question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't want to hog up all the questions. Mr. Chair, in this dollar amount, does this include,
Where'd this come from?
in the contract, does the municipality have the right, for instance, if we had housing, could we reduce our exposure to
date on this?
reimbursable costs if we were able to get housing, like, for instance, leasing a room a hotel versus having to have someone reimburse us or bill us? My point is, if you were coming into summer months, and as we know, usually rates double and triple if people are hoteling it. My question is, would we be well within, I guess, we may have to bring on a whole new set of complexities through purchasing or something. Could we get contracts with some corporation or company to do lease places?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Honeman, we're in the process of putting together an invitation to bid, an ITV, through the purchasing department. We will acquire I think we're thinking 30 rooms for a period of up to a year. We have to set the number right so we're not overpaying for those rooms. And then we're going to request that they bus people from wherever those are or through places down to our location where we're going to be implementing. So we are expecting an ITB to go out in the month of May so that we can lower our travel costs and also require that our consultants stay in one place. When we did, Crestor came up to do the PeopleSoft 2.5, I put them at the 8th Avenue Hotel, and they begged me to get out of it, but
You go, Kate.
One last one. I'm going to go to Mr. Steele, Mr. Hone.
Go, Kate.
I'll be first. I'll come back.
Okay. Mr. Hone, Steele.
Thank you very much. Kate, is this to take us through a particular time, or is this is this what we're shooting for, and it's flexible and maybe adjusted? Or
I'd be happy, Mr. Train, to walk through the proposal that I have for you and explain to you the rationale. I put a tremendous amount of time into trying to do a good job preparing a budget that you can rely on, and I'd like to take an opportunity to walk you through it. I know
Great.
we're coming close, and I was hoping we'd have the last half hour to do this.
Go ahead, ma'am.
So you know that I have very poor vision, so I got to put my glasses on, which is going to make it hard for me to go back and forth. So, right. So I tried in various budget iterations to map the budget to fixed activities. Say, for example, I had previously told you we're going to do revitalization. And then you're going to go into realization. And I had said, let's get you a budget that takes you through 9/30. But I was having a very difficult time determining whether we'll be in development or revitalization at that time period. So I was spending a lot of time trying to make it clearer how much money you were going to spend on each function so that you could feel confident that we had a budget for each section. But we don't have a budget for each section. We aren't there yet. We're still in the process of working through our planning. So I wanted you to have a task-loaded schedule so you could feel confident. And ZIG wants us to have a task-loaded schedule. But that task loading of the schedule is going to take some time to put together because you have to get through the inventory to find out what you have to blueprint and what you can keep and throw away. So it was not simple, and it wasn't going to be meaningful to you, and you couldn't rely on it. So then I went through a process of determining. We originally had budgeted for 56,000 hours, 56 or 57,000 consulting hours when Black & Veatch first gave you their proposal. So they said it'll take us 56,000 hours of consulting time to deliver you this product. And I feel that we are within a reasonable estimate of 57,000 hours to finish this product. And so I went back to that original Black & Veatch. I looked at their schedule. I compared it to where we are today. And then I budgeted based on 960 hours per consultant. Now, what that means is that you have general ledger. General ledger is really what you would consider, I know Mr. Evans doesn't like colors, but it's green, right? It's good. It's almost what Sid likes to call go live ready, right? It's almost there. But we want to have that guy come in, finish that up, leave, and let other people catch up to them, and then come back and get ready for testing and go live. So a lot of these consultants were going to go like this. And that's very difficult for me to predict when that's going to happen. So I did a straight line, 960 hours per module. So General Ledger has 960 hours, AR has 960 hours, and that detail is in these sheets below. Now that doesn't mean that these numbers are right. That means that these numbers probably conservatively reflect the amount of effort that's going to take to get through General Ledger to what I consider go live for Philo. So you're gonna come in and come out, come in and come out, and then go live for general ledger. HCM is a different story altogether. I doubled the number of consultants for each module for HCM because it's where your risk is. So rather than having a one-to-one relationship where you have a module general ledger and you have a consultant, you have a 2-to-1 ratio. You have 2 consultants for each module. And in HCM, when I mean consultants, I mean Peloton consultants, the guys who are going to switch the knobs. There's also an entire new management layer. They all have 960 hours. So I broke this down to you from management to technical. Technical are the guys that are going to do the technical work. Management is your investment in just the management effort. That's all brand new. So what you have is a proposal of approximately 54,000 hours. My best estimate is that's going to take you to go live readiness for Philo. Okay? You're not going to go over the hoop and go live and then go post go live. But you should be go live readiness for Philo. And that should happen on my current schedule. That should happen roughly around April of 2016. Because Philo is relatively predictable. That should also take you through data conversion for PeopleSoft. Okay, so there's really more than just getting Philo ready to turn on. There's, can you get your data converted? Can you figure out how, in answering someone's question, what are you going to use and how are you going to, you got to keep PeopleSoft data for the next 50 years. How are you going to access it? So we may have to build a system to access the PeopleSoft data because of coming off the mainframe. So all of that effort is an estimate of what it's going to cost. It's not a firm number. You also have HCM, which I think is going to take another incremental cost beyond what I've been able to scope for you. So you could call it another $5 million probably for HCM. That's beyond my request because I don't have the knowledge base to give you the number. But that should take HCM through your go live readiness, which I would say would be September or November, because there's more work to be done there, so I'm less certain. I'm not comfortable giving you a firm deadline. But the goal driving this entire project is to go live with this product on January 1, 2017. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be working all the way through next year, and you're going to be working the rest of this year to be ready to go live. I would like to back that up to 9:30. If we're lucky, we can do it. But I would tell you that I'm quite confident that you're going to have 3 things. You're going to have another request, an increment request coming in the future. I don't know when that future is going to be. The other thing is I'm very confident that this team can take Philo to the go live readiness place that Zig wanted it to go. And I'm also very confident that this is going to cost you more beyond this amount of money for the HCM piece. Those things I can tell you for certain.
Miss Gray Jackson, I know we've only got 10 minutes left, man. Miss Gray Jackson, I got to get to Kate to finish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll talk really, really fast. So the $20.3 million, okay, the HCM is going to be an additional $5 million. I just want some clarity on that. Okay, and what I really would like to see, because we've seen it in the past, especially since we've been having the monthly meetings, I'd like to see MOA's labor costs, because they're not included in these costs, and I would like to see that, not just for general government, but also for utilities. Thank you, Ms. Guard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please continue, Kate.
Mr. Chairman, the last couple things I want to propose to you is we put in $3.5 million for an SAP upgrade. When I came here before in 2003, I asked for $2.5 million to do the upgrade to 7.5 on PeopleSoft. I have really a sense that it's going to cost more than it did in 2003 to do the upgrade. However, we're going to be doing a parallel upgrade. There should be synergies that you received from doing a parallel upgrade, and we're looking at having, if there's a benefit to you, to have SAP do the upgrade offsite so you don't take your individuals that are working on development. So that is an estimate. I feel fairly confident that that's a good number, but that is an estimate. And because I'm an accountant, I estimated high. the Kronos consolidation and upgrade effort, I estimate it's going to take approximately $1 million. What that means is you're going to move to an enterprise-wide Kronos system. So you're on 6.2 right now. 6.2 has security issues. You must get off it. 8.0 is coming out in April. By the time we go to go do an upgrade, we're going to have an enterprise-wide system. That's much easier than trying to take the MOA system that you have right now, merge it with the MLP system, and then put everybody else on it. You're really going to want to go to an enterprise-wide, brand new system so that everybody comes up into it. And that's my plan. And to get to that position, you're going to make an investment in Kronos resources, and I've estimated that at $1 million. SAP gate checks, that's your insurance policy that you're buying for approximately $2.5 million. You're buying gate checks where SAP will fly in and they will look at the work that's being done. Because SAP is not running this engagement, they have no vested interest in protecting Tom Dale from being, excoriated. They are your insurance policy. And we think that that's very valuable insurance for you to buy. And the rest is Project Track. I'm going to ask you for another $100,000 for Project Track. I'm willing to defend it. I think we need a timekeeping system. We cannot procure that as part of the Project Track. It has a time function, but all of the senior project managers do not like using it, and it's not efficient for us to be able to report and pull data from. So I will request that separately, and I will defend it separately from that. I just want to let you know it's in there, and then the rest of it is just laptops and things. Thank you very much.
I got a quick question.
Ms. Gray Jackson, then Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Johnston.
Sorry I have so many questions, but it is what it is. And did I hear you say that somewhere along the line we're going to have to upgrade to PeopleSoft 7.5 in order for the conversion to work?
Mr. Trainee, no ma'am, I was referring back to those holidays of 2002 when I was requesting the assembly for the
Gotcha.
original.
2002, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
And currently, this team is all located on the 6th floor of City Hall, or?
Through the chair, very good point, Ms. Johnston. We are now looking for a place where the entire team can be housed. It's approximately 5,500 square feet, or if you want the training center locally housed, it's another couple thousand square feet. ConocoPhillips building has 7,000 square feet available, and the Sunshine building has 5,500 square feet available. We have requested a budget request from you in the first quarter budget revision, because that's not capital, of $165,000 to co-locate, put everybody, that entire team together.
Do you feel the team needs to be downtown?
Through the chair, the mayor believes that the team needs to be downtown, and I believe that the entire team would prefer to be downtown.
I guess, and there is going to be construction at the library, but there is the 4th floor of the library that has ample space.
That's available?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, we've been looking all over for the last 2 months, so that's a great idea. We'll talk to HLB has been doing the work, not us.
Right.
We'll definitely speak to that.
It's a space that never comes up, and
3rd floor, I think. 2nd.
I think it's the 4th floor.
4th floor.
Yeah, and it's been, they've been trying to find
Executive.
purpose for it, and so it might be a
In all
place to
these
look
years,
at.
huh? Since the 80s, huh?
We were looking at something called the Porcupine Building, but it needed to have like bathrooms put in. So HLB is in charge of finding a space. We are not in charge.
Mr. Holman.
Most of mine have been, questions have been answered, but I might have zoned you for a moment. Back to you.
Mr. Steele.
Yeah, just a smart comment. The library would certainly like the revenue, I'm sure.
Through the chair, thank you. I did ask the parking garage if they had any space, because I was willing to just kind of encapsulate it, but they weren't ready.
Mr. Holman.
I'll pass it on. I know you've been asking a lot of my share of questions. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Evans. Tell me we're done.
Thank you all.
Kate, thank you very much, and to everybody that's here, thank you, all of you guys. You gave us the information we need, and we appreciate this. This meeting's over with.